interest you, because unless you do not have a robust economy with a decent growth rate, I think you cannot make those decisions which you plan to make. So let's start, looking at where we are today. But just to give you a historical background, in the 60s, we were the fourth largest economy in Asia. We were bigger than South Korea, twice as big as, Saudi Arabia and Thailand. And we were only, obviously second to Japan, China, India. And so what went wrong? What went wrong? We had a massive nationalization in 72, 73, followed by another, misadventure when the military dictator of those times, put us into this Afghan war in 1979. It was not our war, but we went into that and suffered because there were millions of Afghanis which came to Pakistan, and we kept fighting till, it ended in 1987, 88. But by then, we were deep into the war, and frankly, the Mujahideens and others who obviously had fought the war were left with us, just like a big bag which we had to hold, and everybody else left. And so what did we do? For the next 10 years, we obviously dealt with that situation till, we went to another, kind of war, which was the 2001 war on terror. And all that, meant that we again lost another 10 years. So all these things meant that the Pakistan, economy suffered. We not only suffered casualties, we also suffered, economic losses. And then we obviously had a democratic government come again, in 2008. 2008 to 2018, I would say, uneventful, kind of economic performance, because even in those years, we did not fix the kind of, structural imbalances, structural flaws which we had. And all through this period, which is I would say 25 to 30 years, since 2019, 72, 73, we just kept building, we kept on, kind of living with the structural imbalances. And what were the structural imbalances? Structural imbalances were that our tax to GDP was pathetic. It was, always hovered around 10%, which is not enough to meet, the not only the current expenditure, but also the development expenditure. We, of course, had a mismatch between our exports and our imports that would always put pressure on us. But another structural imbalance which continues even today is the saving rate. Unless you have a saving rate which can support 6 to 8% growth rate, which means that your saving rate should be north of 25%. We always had a saving rate which hovered around between 13% to maybe 18%. So not good enough to sustain a growth rate of 6% plus. Then we also, the productivity in our industrial sector, once, the investments stopped, because after nationalization, who the hell would just invest in Pakistan, because they were not even treated very well once the nationalization took place. So productivity went down. Agriculture, we just ignored. We thought this is a given, that we will produce wheat, we will produce, other food items. So it was given, so we never focused on improving the productivity of the agriculture sector. So guess what? We are food short as of now. We are a food deficit country as of now. So no structural changes, etc. And in comes, PTI government in 2018, faced with a current account deficit of $20 billion, had to pay another $10 billion for foreign currency loans, and went around, trying to gather money from friends. Well, they helped us, but not good enough, so we basically had to go to the IMF. IMF, as you know, has a cookie-cutter approach. They like to take out the demand from the economy. That at that stage, the economy was growing at around 6% on the rebased basis, and they just basically took the demand out, and we just, within a year, we just, our growth rate dropped to around 3%. What did they do? They, depreciated the rupee, they increased the discount rate, they just slapped, higher utility payments. Now, all that meant that we actually had to slow down the economy so that the demand, extra demand, which was creating problems for us, had to go away. So, well, the government was trying its best, and I think it was trying its best to cope with this situation till, they face another major crisis, and that's COVID-19. So COVID-19 came in 2019. And during that period, I would say that I must give full credit to the Prime Minister, his imaginative way of handling that COVID, whereby we probably ranked one of the top 3 in the response to COVID and the way we responded. And he kept on investing in agriculture, kept on investing in industry and exports, and kept on investing in housing. And by the way, housing was a new area because Pakistan's, mortgage to GDP was 0.25%, when he took over, power. Why? Because the foreclosure law was defective, banks would not lend, and so we were one of those countries actually not using, the construction sector productively. So I am a banker, I know that we kept trying, and because he has a lot of perseverance, so he just fixed the foreclosure law, and industry, started, to yield some results. So by 2021 June, the economy actually, the surprise of everybody, was growing at 5.6%. Not bad at all, because a year before that, it had a negative growth of 1%, like every other country in the world. But the V curve was around 6.6%. That's great. That's when I just joined the government, and then we decided that no, we are now going to grow the economy because we have a major problem that our employment. We need employment. So we need something happening here. Oh, okay. So we needed a growth, but we said that we will have inclusive and sustainable growth. And because we never had sustainable growth, so every 3-4 years when we would grow, the economy will fall, we'll go to the IMF. We actually by now have gone 23 times to the IMF. Society programs which will help them stand on their own feet. That meant inclusive. The second was sustainable. When I came, we had some people planned 14 sectors of our economy, and also there's a group which actually why we did not have sustainable growth for so many years. So they said there are 3 flaws in the economy. One, very low percentage rate, which means that unless not growth or saving rate 25% plus, you cannot sustain around 6% plus growth. Because rule of thumb is saving rate divided by 4 is sustainable growth. So with a 13-14%, we could only sustain 3.5-4% growth. The minute we cross that level, there would pressure on the economy, imports and crash. So first thing is saving rate. Second is there is a big gap between the exports. Exports at around 8% or so, imports at around 20%. So huge gap. And whenever there will be growth, there will be obviously more imports, and that's the export will sustain that, and we basically crash again. Third is low productivity in the agriculture sector, in the industry. So all these things came out, and we said we are tackling. So what we did, we basically said firstly, we are going to grow our revenues. Our revenues, which were at 4.7 trillion, we said we will be growing to 5.8 trillion. But, more importantly, in the next 5 to 7 years, we should be closer to 18 to 20% tax to GDP than where we were at around 9% of tax to GDP. So so how would we do that? I think we had to reform the tax structure. I think our FBR, obviously, the way they were conducting, their business was not up to it, and you all know it. So we basically have decided to use technology, to see, different elements of data information, so that we can capture more people. We broaden the tax base. The tax base is only 3 million, taxpayers. But even out of the 3 million taxpayers, there's only 2 million taxpayers who actually pay taxes. 1 million just, file nil tax returns. So we said we are going to broaden, because in a country of 220 million people, I think it doesn't make sense to have, a tax base of 2 million, taxpayers. So we obviously we have now identified extra millions of, taxpayers. We know we have their data. We are going to go to them. So that's a major initiative. The second is obviously the retail sector. Today we have sales of around, retail sales of 20 trillion. We only capture 3.5 trillion. So where is the remainder, almost 16.5 trillion. So we got to capture that, and we are going to use that using technology, POS machines and the works. Thirdly, we are going to use track and trace, and frankly, in some major, industries that will help us. We started with tobacco, we started with cement, oil, sugar, and I think there will be 20 industries we are going to just use track and trace. And then single window to just help the customs, I think, recover money, and especially curb the over-invoicing, under-invoicing, kind of malaise which we have. So I think revenues have to grow, and revenues have to grow closer to 20% in the next 5 to 7 years if we have to grow, to a sustainable, 6% plus. The second is obviously we said that we are going to just put emphasis on agriculture. We cannot have a country, as big as Pakistan, which is growing, at about 1.8, 1.9%, in population, and actually not, become productive in agriculture. So agriculture is being, looked at, and frankly speaking, I must give credit to the Habib Bank, which has really conducted, some research, and is coming up with the ways of, from end to end, increasing the productivity in the agriculture, and hopefully other institutions will follow. And we have also asked China to help us in improving the agriculture productivity. Then comes, industry and exports. You must understand that our industry is obviously, in the import industry, we have some foreign investment. You all are sitting here. But in exports, we have zero FDI. So we have to now, figure out why is it that we have a Chapter 11 now. We are going to have a private equity, and we will use that to consolidate the industry, and then sell, and hopefully sell to the foreign investors. So that means we'll bring in foreign investment into into the export industry, and make it more efficient. We'll also, we have asked the Chinese that their relocation of around 85 million jobs, which they are doing, I think they should bring some of those to Pakistan and to the special economic zones, which they have helped us to build, and the connectivity they have created. So we will ask them to just help us to increase their investment in Pakistan, and especially the export-oriented industry. Thirdly, we believe the one thing which will help us bridge the gap between imports and exports is IT. And we are giving all kind of concessions to the IT industry that it should grow. Last year it grew by 47%. This year they're probably going to be growing at 70%. And I said, you tell me what you need and I'll give it to you, and you please grow by 100% every year. And if they keep growing 100% every year, in 5 years' time, the IT exports are going to hit $50 billion. That's going to dent the difference between the imports and exports. So that is where we are heading. We are also looking at, obviously our power sector, and the industrial sector, obviously the policies which we have given, not only to the large industries, we are also the SME. I think that should help us, also grow the small and medium, because our large-scale, industry is growing at around 7% plus, but the SME, which is starved of everything else, including, the credit. If you look at, the credit, we have around 4 to 5 million, SMEs, and only 180,000 SMEs get credit from the formal banking sector. That's not acceptable. So I think we have to just, basically give help to, to the SMEs, and I think this government is doing it for the first time. Now, we will be looking at, how to fix the energy sector as well. You know that, we obviously were faced with overcapacity in electric generation. We had, to pay capacity payments around 350 billion rupees a year when we took over power. Last year, this year, it is 850 billion rupees of capacity payment. Of electricity we don't even use. By next year, it is over a. This is hemorrhaging our, financing, the public sector finances. So I think we are taking, multiple, kind of steps to do that, fix that. Then there is this illusion that our banking sector is very efficient and banking sector takes care of, all the needs of, our economy. I don't think so. The banking footprint is only 33% of GDP. And of that, they just lend, less than 50%, which means only 14% of GDP is supported by the formal sector. We got to fix the financial sector because there is a problem, in resource, sharing. Only 9 cities consume 85% of credit, and 75% is corporate. Everything else is, like peanuts. SME is 7%, consumer is 7%, agriculture 6%. We've got to fix that. And obviously, if you look at, regional disparity, yeah, okay, I'm back to normal. So the banking sector, the financial sector has to become partner in the growth of the economy, and I think it is not. We also have to make sure that the progress we have made on the housing and construction sector, we keep doing it, because all over the world, the housing sector is, X percentage of GDP. In the US, it is almost 80%, and in India it's 10. In Thailand, it is 26. Around 40% in Malaysia, and we are less than 1%. So unless we do not, and this is, kind of widespread, growth when and even growth all over the country when you do construction, 40 industry actually starts, growing. So that's very important. Then, obviously the social sector. I think we have spent a lot of money on ESAS and on some very, very good programs in ESAS, whereby we just went to the lower segments of our society and we said, we will take care of you. Then we said, as I said, inclusive. And when we said inclusive, we started programs like Kamyab Pakistan program, Kamyab Jawan program. And people will say, oh, these are those political programs which governments introduce. No, no, sir. They are not political programs. They are, yes, political in a sense that Imran Khan wanted to just set up a Rasat al-Medina, where it has to be a welfare state, where the lower segments of our society have to be looked after. Let me give you an example of Kamyab Pakistan. Kamyab Pakistan program is a program whereby we don't do anything. There is a number 5771, they just dial in, they give their ID card number, it goes to the SAS database, goes back to a pool, and where these entities like Akhuwat, NRSP and others, and they are not government-owned entities, they pick up those names and they go and talk to them, negotiate the loans and give it to them. Totally transparent. The only thing we do is we tell the wholesale banks to give money to the NGOs and the NBFIs, which was not being done. So it's an absolutely unique program that was thought by very, very intelligent people, and they said, let's wholesale credit to these entities, Akhuwats and others, and they'll retail the credit to the people on the ground. Absolutely phenomenal, and it is happening. We are probably going to hit around 10 to 15 billion rupees a month, which means 4 million families in 3 to 5 years will get agriculture loans interest-free, for business interest-free, for housing interest-free. Obviously, we have a huge, what we call the Sehat card, which is a phenomenal, product, for every family. And then we'll give skill training to everybody. A complete package for 4 million households. This is what we call inclusive growth. Why? Because we are not going to just give fish to these people. We are going to teach them how to catch fish. And they will be standing on their own feet within 3 to 5 years, and that will give strength to this economy. So what are we doing in the long run then? What we are doing over there is, in the long run, is we want to have an inclusive and sustainable growth which will carry us into the next 20 to 30 years, and that's when we will become an economy, but it used to be the 4th largest economy in the 60s. Maybe even in the next 10, 15 years, we are not the 4th largest economy, but we certainly will be in one of the top 10 economies in Asia. And once we have that stable economy and stable economic growth, I think you guys in petrochemical who know more about petrochemical can invest. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shaukat Saab. You definitely have had very comprehensive comments about the future